Welcome to the Career Secrets channel. I'm your host, Professor Edmund. Today, I have the distinct honor of speaking with Dan Vetras, a visionary leader who 17 years ago saw potential in me and offered an opportunity that has profoundly shaped my career. Dan, your leadership fostered an organization where a vibrant culture thrived. I was so impressed when I first visited the head office. Everyone was so driven but friendly. I also noticed that everyone was health conscious, and it was so refreshing. I still recall the anticipation surrounding the $3 million deal, a defining moment early in my tenure. The high expectations set by executive team were daunting, yet I was excited. I'm eternally thankful for the trust and guidance provided by Brad, Dave, and yourself, which were instrumental in winning the biggest deal in my career at the time. One of the most interesting things I learned from you was maintaining peak performance, even when traveling across many time zones, a strategy that exemplifies your commitment to excellence. Your ability to remain productive regardless of challenges is something that has stayed with me throughout my career. Dan, thank you for joining me today. Dan is the CEO of Kollective Technology. Welcome, Dan.
Thank you, Edmund. Very nice of you. Very kind words. Well appreciated.
Thank you. Do you mind telling us about Kollective Technology?
Sure. Kollective is a SaaS cloud-based software company. We have a platform that allows us to do three things for large enterprises and smaller ones as well, now that video has become so predominant, as exemplified by this meeting we're having right now, which maybe 5 years ago would have been over a Polycom speakerphone, which I don't even use anymore because we all use video. So the use case or the value proposition has three pillars: observability, analytics, and optimization. I'll very quickly walk you through that. What we do is we help companies we deliver video securely and at scale for thousands of employees across the world, live and on demand. You'd probably ask why on demand? Well, because many employees don't see a live event from a C-level executive. They could be traveling, they could be out on holiday, they could be sick. So there is a long tail where a bulk of them watch it after the fact, just like we record our own TV shows and then watch them when it's convenient. But basically, we are the underlying plumbing that allows companies to observe how the video is being received at the user level, every single user in the company. So we're not about the network traversing, we're about what happens to you as a user in Toronto or Singapore or Bangalore. We have analytics that show who's attended the event, for how long, what was the quality of delivery of the video, what was the quality of experience. We have a number of different metrics. We have AI and ML built into those analytics. And then finally, we have optimization, which is how we deliver it. So we take a file, any file, into any organization, and the first person that clicks on the meeting to join becomes the leader unknowingly, and we cache the file on their machine. No one uses all the CPU power that we have these days. Laptops are like mainframes were 20 years ago, and that will continue to be the case, just like phones. So we cache the file on the first person's machine, and then we start breaking up the file, the single file, and we create what's called a mesh network. What that means is if there are 100 people in an office or 500, the number is actually irrelevant. The file comes in one time and it gets shared using what's called peer-to-peer, P-E-R to P-E-R, peer-to-peer technology. What this allows for is the network to not be congested. If you didn't use something like Kollective and there were 100 or 500 or whatever that number of viewers were in that office, the stream would have to come in for every one of those. And that's how congestion and bandwidth saturation occurs. So we offload the network, in some cases up to 99%, and we're doing it for some of the largest companies in the world.
Wow. That sounds really interesting. Okay, let's talk about Dan.
Okay.
What inspired you to pursue a career in technology and eventually become a CEO?
I don't know if I was inspired or if I just got lucky, like a lot of people do early in their careers. I actually thought I might go into coaching. I played American football at a small college in New England, and one of my coaches went on to be the head coach somewhere else in New England as well, and he offered me a grad assistant position to come in and help him, but also get an MBA, which would be paid for because I'd be working full time as a coach. It sounded appealing. It didn't have any income attached to it. In parallel, I had some interviews with local financial services, insurance companies. And then I had an uncle who was dating somebody in a tech company, a very large manufacturer of mini computers, the largest in the world at that time in New England as well, and asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, at some point, I might want to go to law school. And before I knew it, I was interviewing with the contracts department of this big company without a law degree, thinking, okay, well, if I can get hired, I go to law school at night. I was hired. It was the first time they took a chance on somebody. I was a political science major. I like to tell people I was a science major, but not a computer science one, a political science one. Again, thinking I had aspirations to be in law. And once I was hired and once I spent about a year in that organization, which I really, really liked everything that they were about, there was an opportunity to move into sales. And there was an internal development program, which I was nominated for. And it meant not going back to your previous position. So when you went into this program, it was a 6-month, very intense training. Not many companies do that anymore. They don't invest in their employees like they should. But back then, and I'm talking back in the 80s, it was much more prevalent. So I went in knowing that if it didn't work out, I couldn't fall back to the position I had in that company. Luckily, I got through. It was pretty intense. There were a lot of testing. There were a lot of role playing, video filming, everything from configuring a backplane to reading books like How to Dress for Success, how to make a full Windsor knot tie versus a half Windsor knot. But something I don't think this generation today even understands, never mind, did they have to wear a suit to work every day like we used to? So that really spurred me getting into sales. I felt like I was more in control of my career. I like the interaction. I like being outside and on the road rather than just being in a cubicle or an office all day. So it was just really the luck of an uncle who was dating somebody that got me an interview, and they took a chance on me.
Great story.
It's true.
Is your uncle still around? Can
No,
you
unfortunately,
introduce
he's
him to me?
passed. It was a
Oh,
long time ago, but
sorry.
yeah, he was just, I was at a family function. I just happened to be at a family function. My mother was one of 11 children, and this was one of her brothers.
Beautiful story. What was your first big break, and how did it happen?
Um, so I ended up with that company for almost 5 years, and I ended up in sales where I wanted to be, but I had to relocate out of New England in order for that to happen. And so I moved to Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which is just outside of Philadelphia. And while I was there, a software company also in New England and Boston called Lotus Development, as in Lotus 123, the original spreadsheet, Lotus Notes, the original collaboration platform. They were hiring someone to open up in that region. Philadelphia at the time was the fourth largest city in America. And then if you think about New Jersey, which again, I lived in southern New Jersey, but as you go up the Jersey Turnpike, you have all kinds of companies, Johnson and Johnson, I mean, Squibb, Merck, I mean, a lot of pharma and financial services as you get closer to New York, and then you get into Delaware, and you've got DuPont. And so I interviewed and I was flown up to Boston and they hired me. So I opened up the first office ever for Lotus in the Mid-Atlantic region. So that was a break. Subsequently, I'll tell you the second, I think, even bigger break was a couple of years into that job. We were growing exceedingly fast, and we were the largest software company in the world at that time, larger than Microsoft. I was nominated again for an international assignment. So the CEO of the company thought it would be a good cultural move to bring somebody from the US over to the UK. Our headquarters was in Windsor, England. If you don't know where Windsor is, that's where the castle is. That's where the Queen used to hang out on weekends. It's a beautiful place, 25 miles west of London. I had never been to London. They flew me over to interview and to meet the team. Everybody seemed to like me. My immediate manager in New York City was a good sales guy, and he made a case for me over others that were nominated, and I was eventually selected. So we moved over, my wife, my first child, and as soon as we got there, or actually a little before, she found out she was pregnant. So my second child was actually born in Windsor, England. But the international assignment aspect of it to me was the greatest education I ever could have. I thought while I was living in the greater Philadelphia area that I wanted to go back to school and get my executive MBA and do that at night at Rutgers University because they had a satellite campus in southern New Jersey. But this came up and I thought, having international experience, living abroad, working with different cultures and people from multiple countries would probably be as beneficial. And it turned out to be the case. and I just got the bug. I started to read the Financial Times on a regular basis, which I think is probably the greatest newspaper or publication now in the world. And although it was only 2.5 years before we came back, I still maintained friendships there. And I always felt like in any future role I would have, that there had to be an international component of it in it for me, which is why I've always been so driven to expand outside of the US in any company I was asked to run.
Another great story. What was the most difficult thing you have done in your career?
I would say anytime you have to downsize your organization through, economic conditions not being, what we want them to be. So that is, there's nothing that is more of a gut punch to me than putting somebody out of work. And in the cases where I've had to, I've made it crystal clear that it wasn't performance-based, and I would be a personal reference for them. I'd help them look at opportunities, and I've tried to do that throughout my career. But the downsizing and laying off of anybody, especially a direct report of yours, which I've had to do in some cases, is just it's gut-wrenching.
Appreciate that. What is your philosophy on company politics?
We shouldn't have any.
Good answer, but how do you impose?
I try to stay close to it, and I normally am able to, and I have in this particular case, and I have in my career earlier, had an assistant that was very close to the pulse of what was happening in the business, particularly if I'm traveling 30, 40, 50% of the time. So it's making sure you've got somebody that you can trust, that has high integrity and isn't a tattletale, but wants to make sure you know what's really going on in your own organization. Now, my door is open. I preach an open door policy, but people aren't always as willing to share with the CEO as they are with somebody else. And I'm not there to observe everything. And I'll tell you a quick story where in this company, when I first started years ago, I was traveling, and one of the employees here in Bend, Oregon, where we're based, we also had an office in Sunnyvale, California, where the company was originally based, but I moved it here 9 years ago. Having said that, we kept the office in California for quite a while. One of the employees, in an open environment, because that's what we moved into when we first came to Oregon, was berating his manager over the phone to the point where it was embarrassing, and people were looking down at their feet, not wanting to make eye contact at a very high volume.
Wow.
And I didn't know any of this happened until I came back, and my assistant said, "I need to talk to you about something because I just don't feel good about it." And we sat down, and she shared that with me. And I called the executive in California and said to her, let's talk about what happened here and how this person who's your direct report raised their voice to the point where it was embarrassing and didn't leave the open bullpen area. And she said, "Which time are you talking about?" And I said, "That's all I needed." So we terminated the person the next day.
Wow. What's the most unexpected thing you've learned from running a technology business?
I would say that there are people in this industry that don't like change. Now, I know that's I won't call it a normal human factor, but there are a lot of humans that are born in a town, are raised in that town, and are going to die in that town. And there's nothing wrong with that whatsoever. As long as you can adapt to change along the way. I had somebody tell me in this company a few years ago that they absolutely hate change, and they were in marketing. And I thought, okay, that is not a good thing. If there's one thing we know about life, is that change is inevitable. If there's something we know about tech, even more so, is it's inevitable on a regular basis, huge change. And so it just stuck with me that there are people that aren't as interested in moving through new paradigms as I would have thought. You just naturally assume everybody in tech is just really at the edge and wanting to learn the newest and the greatest, and from a phone to a laptop to the way we market our technology, and that's not necessarily the case. Now, the good part of that, and I learned this at Talisma, where we work together, is that not everybody wants change every day. And when I took over for the founder, who's incredibly bright, and we've maintained a personal relationship through the years, he was so ahead of everybody else from an IQ and a thought process that it was hard for people to keep up. And there were a lot of times where the direction was changing faster than people could even digest. And so in that scenario, I tried to slow it down, and we went from um, all hands meetings were all I heard when I first came into that opportunity where we worked together was, well, we don't know what's going on. Things are happening too fast. And I said, fine, let's slow it down. Let's have an all hands meeting every day. So literally every day we met as a company and we talked about where we were going, what we were doing. And then they came to me and said, okay, I think we can go to once a week. So then we went to every week to have an all hands meeting. And then finally, the feedback was, okay, I think we all understand where we're going. Let's go to once a month. But I made sure that I kept it going at once a week for another month or two. And then we went to once a month. And I've never deviated from that. So every company I've ever run, we've had an all hands meeting every month. You probably remember. And we go through the entire business, slide by slide, every function, so that anybody from the office manager to the CIO can tell you what's happening.
That's brilliant, Stan. Okay, fun question. What's the weirdest or the most memorable question or request you have gotten from an employee?
Well, I think you're probably familiar with, bring your pet to work. That was a big thing and still is. And I have a dog I bring in here occasionally, a Great Dane that everybody in the office is fond of. So we did that in one of my companies, and I felt like I was, a great CEO. Look at me, understanding the culture, and people want to bring a pet to work, thinking it was going to be a dog. And then people started to ask if they could bring the wildest animals possible. And so we had to shut it down altogether because I couldn't be biased to somebody who's, somebody had a snake for a pet versus a dog for a pet, or a cat or an iguana, so I learned a hard lesson there.
That was a good one. Let's talk about the executive team selection. What key qualities do you look for when building your executive teams?
They've got to be a team player. I know that sounds rhetorical, but I've seen so many exceptionally smart people in this industry, way smarter than me, as an example, who can't seem to work with others in a cohesive manner. Some need to be the smartest person in the room. Some need to talk more than they listen. Some never got less than an A or a 4.0 at university and feel like that translates to being part of a larger organization where you're asked to play a specific role and sometimes take a back seat to other people, especially from a credit standpoint. There's a saying that somebody taught me a long time ago, and you'll love it up in Canada. When the puck goes in the net, everybody's stick goes up. Right? And that's what it should be. It shouldn't be one stick going up because it's a team effort. Now, you can also say, well, people are taking credit that shouldn't because they didn't put the puck in the net. Now, maybe somebody made the pass before and they got the assist, or two passes in hockey. But I still believe that you've got to have more humility and less of an ego than anything else to be successful as a team.
Love that. The next question is on career insight. Could you share some of the best career moves you've seen in your career?
People who are willing to take a chance. I think that's certainly the first one. I talked about, my being nominated for the opportunity to go over to the UK and be part of the international team. I was the only American there out of 130 people, so that was quite the education. I could have turned that down, but it was risky. Didn't know there was no return ticket back at that time. It was just a one-way, here's a 3-year expat assignment, and let's see what happens. So if you're willing to take risks, I think you're going to be afforded a lot more opportunities in your career. Now, if you're married or have a significant other, then you've got to have mutual buy-in there, because that's not going to work for you personally if it's all about you and not the people that you're sharing your life with at the time. So to me, it's absolutely number one, paramount. Are you willing to take a risk? And two, and it's easier to do this today with tools like LinkedIn for sure, networking. Just getting to understand your industry. One of the things I've started to do, well, it's not started, I started to do it after the first CEO job I had, was I reached out to get to know my competition. So I would know the CEOs of other companies we competed with. You probably think that's strange if you've never done it, but there's kind of a mutual respect, and you don't share things that you're not supposed to. But I absolutely wanted to know them as a person. We could end up working together someday down the road. We could end up merging the companies at some point. So the networking aspect, the taking risks, I don't think there are two more important things to help you career-wise.
Excellent. That's so wise. The next one is on interviews. What are the most impressive actions or responses you've seen from candidates during interviews?
Well, in today's world, a handwritten note as a follow-up is pretty impressive because people don't seem to do that like they used to. So that actually resonates with me. I don't think because I'm old school, but just because it shows you've taken the time to follow up. And especially if it's in a sales position, that's part of enterprise sales, as you well know. It's the continual effort to build rapport with your prospect, who eventually you would like to become your customer. So that to me doesn't happen as often, but it has recently, and I was overly impressed. Um, I'm not sure there's anything else that jumps out right now at me, but maybe we could come back to that later.
Excellent. On artificial intelligence, how do you perceive the impact of AI on career opportunities in technology, and what should the career-minded do to prepare for it?
I think it's going to impact all of us. I downloaded ChatGTP a few weeks ago and started playing around with it. I think I just saw one of our employees in Europe posted a note on LinkedIn that he's going to go to a Google class and be certified on AI. Doesn't have to. He's a sales guy that covers Southern Europe for us. It does it very well in places like Italy and Spain. But he wants to learn, again, the always wanting to progress your career. I think it's going to take longer for AI to impact the broader employment base than what is being forecasted. I also read an article in the Wall Street Journal last week that investors are very reticent right now to look at AI as an investment. Or let me put it a different way. They're doing a lot more diligence than they did during the dot-com era, which turned into the dot-bomb for many of those companies. So I think that there'll be a lot of money that'll go into AI. Every day you read more about it. There's no question we're using it, as I mentioned, in our analytics stack here and in our core technology too. Even the peering, we're doing predictive peering now. So we'll use history for some of our customers to show what the best way to peer the content is. I don't want to get super technical here, but there is a way to optimize how you move that video file around, especially if you're talking about 10, 20,000 employees. When we do all hands for some of our customers, there are 40,000 or more people attending. So this is a big thing to add AI to. But I do believe there's a lot of hype right now, and it's going to shake out over the next few years.
Excellent. On leadership roles, what steps would you recommend for someone aspiring to reach senior management or C-level?
I don't think you can ever not learn enough. I think the ability to absorb information, whatever the medium is or the form. I start my day with the FT, the Wall Street Journal, things that come up on my just normal portal, my MSN portal that I use for information. I really believe the more you know, especially the more you know about the global economy, the better leader you can be as your career unfolds. To me, that's the absolute first thing, is never stop learning, and also absorbing. And I really make a point of doing this when I travel internationally. I always try to get my hands on a local publication, or if I'm in Japan and I can't read it, I'll have my guys translate for me over there. But or I'll use Google Translate on my phone. But my point is, I was in Germany 6 months ago with Bayer, as they say over there, and we sat down over lunch and we talked about the politics in Germany. We talked about immigration. We talked about sports, as in soccer, football over there. And they were impressed that I knew as much as I did about their country. To me, that's just part of doing business, going in and having been prepared to be able to have rapport building conversations, and also to show these people, whoever they are, prospects, customers, partners, that you care enough about, what they do and where they live, that you are read up on it before you meet.
Great. A
I'm
follow-up
not sure
question.
Yeah, I don't know
Okay.
if that answers it
Yeah.
specifically for you.
I just a follow-up question now that we're on that topic. What do you do for networking?
I probably do less of it now in my career because I get a lot of inbound requests, particularly on LinkedIn, hundreds, it feels like. But I stay in touch with my competition, as I said earlier. I know the CEOs personally of anybody we compete with. I absolutely work with our channel partners directly and through the team, obviously, because we use resellers all over the world to bring our product to market. Um, I am part of a couple of groups that I attend virtually, but I'm very protective of my time these days, and I want to make sure that it's focused on the employees first, you know, the customers, the partners, and the ecosystem that makes up whatever company I run.
I appreciate that. Now I think people would be interested in this. For those interested in high technology, what strategies would you suggest for breaking into the field?
Well, I'm sure you're going to expect me to say everybody should have a computer science degree, but that's not necessarily the case. I don't. I've never written a line of code in my life. I'm not bragging with that statement, but there are so many different ways you can contribute in tech. So to me, it's be a well-rounded and informed person, be able to have conversations on a number of topics when and if you're afforded the opportunity to interview, study up on the organization. I remember that first company that recruited me, Lotus Development in Philadelphia. I sat down with the regional manager based out of New York, as I mentioned. And prior to meeting him, there was a story in the Wall Street Journal on this company, how they were started by a transcendental meditationist, a guy named Mitch Kapoor, how they brought in somebody from McKinsey that wasn't even a full partner as a consultant. He ended up being the CEO at 36 years old. How during the I think it was 85 NBA finals between the Celtics and the Lakers, they ran their first television ad ever for a product called Lotus Jazz, which was basically 1, 2, 3 for a Mac back then, because the operating systems are different. There was also a Business Week article that I had read. So as I was in the interview with this regional manager who was deciding who he was going to send up to Boston as his final candidate, I took him through all this and I said, is there anything else? And he said, no, you probably know more about this company than the people that are going to interview you.
Great story. Another great story. Career reflection. If you could start your career over, what changes would you like to make and why?
Um, I alluded to the coaching thing. If I wasn't doing this, because I feel like I'm a coach here as a CEO, a mentor, a team player, I would have taken that grad assistant job. And that coach ended up through a lot of moves, which is what you have to do in that profession, ended up with 2 Super Bowl rings coaching the New York Giants. So I won't take you through his whole career because there were multiple moves, but I feel like if I had tagged along with him, I would have been able to get to the highest level in that sport. Many of the NFL coaches were not superstars or Division I players even. There are a lot of coaches that played at a lower level and just got a break and put their time in. Bill Belichick went to a small school in Connecticut called Wesleyan, Division III, couple thousand students, arguably one of the most successful coaches in the history of the game. The other thing I think about sometimes is would I have gone after college into the military, gone to officers candidate school and joined the Marines, and then had a career in military because I have so much respect for those people. Our head of engineering actually enrolled, joined the Marines, I should say, right out of high school because as he tells me now, he wasn't mature enough to go on to school after that. And he did 2 tours of Afghanistan. He was driving tanks over there. And he came back with the GI Bill, got an undergrad degree in geography and a master's in computer science, all paid for by the government. And now he runs engineering for us. But the military is what, spawned his ability to do that. And he matured pretty quickly once he was assigned to the Middle East.
Beautiful story. Opportunities for graduates or fresh graduates. What would you advise fresh graduates to do today if they want to get into high tech?
I know this sounds superfluous, but networking, just reach out to as many people and lean on people that you know personally. Nothing is going to help more to get in the door than a personal reference. It was my uncle 35 years ago or more. I'm not saying everybody has an uncle or an aunt that works in tech, but tech is so prevalent in our lives that there has to be somebody either in your admissions office, at school, or in your neighborhood, or on LinkedIn that you have a connection with that you don't even know. I would just leverage a personal reference to get your foot in the door if at all possible.
Great. Still on careers, what are the top 3 career tips you would offer to the career-minded?
Never stop learning, as I said earlier. Be open to change. And that translates to physically relocating for the opportunity, as long as you have buy-in from the other side, if you're with someone. If you're not, the decision is easier, I believe. So the ability to keep absorbing current information, current events, particularly tech related, be open to change, and with that comes relocation, and try to exhibit in any way possible that you're a team player and all you want is a chance, and you'll work your way up. Again, I'll go back to the coaching examples. These guys, a lot of them worked for nothing when they first came out of school, and they just kept progressing. Belichick again, and others. There are many, many like him that were barely paid, but they had a passion for what they wanted, and eventually they moved up in the organization. So be willing to come in and take whatever opportunity is offered to you if this is really what you want to do with your career.
Excellent. Fun question. If you're looking for a job today, how would you approach Dan, the CEO, to have him consider you for a position in his company?
Just as I said a few minutes ago, I would find someone that knew Dan, and not that was connected at the 3rd level on LinkedIn, because I must have, and I'm sure you have thousands of connections around the world on LinkedIn, but to me, it's getting to someone that knows me as a 1st level connection, as a friend, as a former manager, boss. So I will absolutely look at people with athletic backgrounds, military backgrounds on their CV, resume, over somebody who doesn't. And I'm sorry if that sounds biased, but that exhibits to me you're willing to sacrifice, you're willing to be a team player, you're willing to do the dirty work that comes with all that. So that would get my attention. It doesn't have to. Not everybody here played a team sport. Not everybody here was in the military, but those 2 things do jump out at me.
Love it. I love that. Last question. Is there a big career secret that you want to share?
No, I think that it's as simple as just grinding it out on a daily basis. And when given the opportunity, and my first CEO opportunity came in a very indirect way. So I'll give a quick story again. I was brought into a venture-backed company as the chief operating officer, and the founder and I got along great. And she decided they wanted to go out and raise some money. So we hired an investment bank, a very big investment bank, and we went on a road show. And when we came back, the banker said, these venture guys are willing, and gals are willing, to put money in the company, but Dan needs to be the CEO. So that was an awkward situation, because we had to talk to the founder and ask if she'd be willing to move up to chairperson, to run the company as a chairwoman. And she said she would. And I don't know how else I would have become a CEO if these bankers didn't convince my investors to give me a chance.
Great story. Beautiful.
So I guess my point in saying that is, you never know when the opportunity is going to come, and just take the ball and run with it for as long as they'll let you do that.
Dan, this has been so impressive, and I can talk to you all day, maybe for many days, nonstop. I thank you on behalf of everybody. I thank you for all the valuable advice and insight.
Well, you're quite welcome, Edmund. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and reconnecting after all these years. This has been a real surprise and a highlight.
Thank you so much, Dan.
All right. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.